Imagine a time before silence, before stars burned in the sky, before space stretched into an endless cold void. Imagine something far more unsettling. What if the vast emptiness above us was once not empty at all? What if space itself was once filled with water? Pause for a moment and feel the weight of that idea. Water, fluid, shifting, alive. Not the gentle rivers we know, but an infinite cosmic ocean. No up, no down, no shore, just depth without end. In such a reality, movement would not be flight. It would be drifting, not walking, but sinking or rising through an eternal abyss. This thought challenges everything we believe about the universe. Today, space is defined by vacuum, emptiness so complete that sound cannot travel. But science whispers strange clues. Hydrogen and oxygen, the building blocks of water, are among the most abundant elements in the cosmos. Massive clouds of vapor drift between stars. Ice exists on comets, moons, and distant planets. Water is everywhere, scattered like memory. So the question emerges, is this all that remains of something much greater? Picture the early universe, not as a burst of light alone, but as a dense, fluid-like state. A place where matter had not yet separated, where everything flowed together. Some theories suggest that the fabric of space itself behaved like a fluid in its infancy, thick, dynamic, and unstable. Not water as we know it, but something eerily similar in behavior. And if space once flowed, then perhaps what we call emptiness is simply what remained after the tide pulled back. There's something deeply unsettling about that, because it means the void above us may not be empty by nature, but empty by loss. Think about astronauts floating in space today. We say they are weightless, but what if, in another version of reality, they would be submerged instead? Not in airlessness, but in an endless ocean with no surface to reach. No breath, no escape, just infinite immersion. This is the nightmare hidden beneath curiosity. The idea that space might not just be cold and empty, but the dried remains of something vast and alive. And yet, there's also wonder here, because if water, or something like it, once filled the universe, then life as we know it may not be an accident. It may be an echo, a continuation of a deeper cosmic story. After all, every drop of water on Earth, every ocean wave, every tear, carries the same elements forged in the stars. So maybe the question isn't just, was space once made of water? Maybe the real question is, are we still part of that ocean in ways we don't yet understand? And if one day we uncover the truth, will it make the universe feel more familiar, or far more terrifying than we ever imagined? The shocking idea, the speech explores a mind-bending concept, that space may not have always been empty, but could have once resembled a vast ocean-like state. Close your eyes for a moment and release everything you think you know about the sky above you. We are taught that space is empty, silent, cold, and lifeless, a vast darkness stretching endlessly in all directions. But what if that belief is only a fragment of the truth? What if the emptiness we see today is not how it always was? Imagine instead that the universe once held something far more tangible, something that moved, shifted, and surrounded everything like an endless sea. Picture space not as a vacuum, but as a boundless ocean, deep, heavy, and alive with motion. Not the calm waters of a quiet shore, but a cosmic expanse with no surface, no bottom, and no escape. Every direction you turn, there is only depth. In such a reality, there would be no stars shining through darkness, no clear horizon to guide you. There would only be immersion, an eternal drifting within something that feels both familiar and terrifying. This idea unsettles the mind because it replaces emptiness with presence. It transforms space from something distant and unreachable into something that could have once surrounded everything, pressing in from all sides. Movement would not mean flying freely, but navigating resistance, as if pushing through an invisible force. Silence would not be absence, but suppression, sound swallowed before it could exist. And then comes the deeper question, if space once held such a state, what caused it to vanish? Did it slowly fade, or was it torn apart, leaving behind the void we now see? The thought lingers, creating a quiet discomfort. Because if emptiness is not the original condition of the universe, then what we call nothing may actually be the result of something lost. This is what makes the idea so powerful. It forces you to reconsider reality itself, not as a fixed truth, but as a changing state. And in that uncertainty, a strange feeling emerges. The universe begins to feel less like a silent void, and more like the aftermath of something we can barely begin to understand. cosmic evidence of water, it highlights how hydrogen and oxygen, the elements of water, are abundant in the universe, and water exists on comets, moons, and in interstellar clouds. Science often begins with certainty, but the deeper it goes, the more it discovers uncertainty hiding beneath familiar truths. When we look at the universe today, we describe it as mostly empty space, vast regions of vacuum where matter is rare and distance dominates everything. Yet, when we trace the universe back to its earliest moments, that clarity begins to blur. Instead of a calm, structured emptiness, we encounter a reality that behaves more like a fluid system, constantly shifting, expanding, and transforming in ways that are still not fully understood. In that early stage, matter and energy were not separated into the forms we recognize now. Everything existed in a dense, highly energetic state where forces interacted in ways that defy ordinary intuition. Some interpretations of cosmological models suggest that this environment did not behave like empty space at all, but more like a continuous medium, something with properties resembling a cosmic fluid. Not water in the literal sense, but a state where everything was interconnected, flowing and evolving as a unified whole. This perspective changes how we think about emptiness. What we call vacuum today may simply be a cooled, expanded version of that original state. Like steam dispersing into invisible air, the universe may have transitioned from something dense and dynamic into something that appears empty only because our senses are not designed to perceive its subtle structure. The most intriguing part of this idea is how it reshapes our understanding of cosmic history. If space once behaved like a fluid-like medium, then separation itself, the formation of stars, galaxies, and even atoms, becomes a story of gradual unfolding rather than sudden creation. Structures we see today could be remnants of patterns that formed while everything was still part of a more unified, flowing system. This leads to a powerful realization. Emptiness might not be the absence of something, but the final form of transformation. What appears silent and vacant could actually be the end state of something once active and dynamic. In that sense, the universe is not a static void but a living record of change, carrying within it the memory of its own deeper, more fluid beginning. Early universe as a fluid state, the speech suggests that in its earliest phase, the universe behaved like a dense, fluid-like environment where everything flowed together. When we talk about the origins of space, we often imagine a clean beginning, light breaking through darkness, matter forming from nothing, and the universe expanding into a silent void. But if we look deeper, both scientifically and philosophically, the story becomes less straightforward and far more mysterious. The idea that space once had a more fluid nature challenges the way we understand nothingness itself. In modern physics, space is not truly empty. Even in the most vacuum-like conditions, there are fluctuations, energy fields, and particles appearing and disappearing in ways that seem to defy permanence. This suggests that what we call emptiness is actually a structured kind of something, just operating at a level we cannot easily perceive. If we extend this idea backward in time, it becomes possible to imagine a universe where the structure was far more dense and interconnected, behaving almost like a continuous medium. In such a state, separation as we know it would not exist. There would be no clear distinction between objects, no isolated stars or galaxies. Only a flowing, unified system where everything influences everything else. Over time, as expansion occurred and energy spread out, this unified state could have thinned, cooled, and evolved into the vast cosmic space we observe today. What remains would feel empty only because its original density and interaction have faded beyond recognition. This perspective also changes how we interpret cosmic evolution. Instead of thinking of the universe as moving from nothing to something, we begin to see it as a transformation from one state of existence to another. The void is not a starting point but a result of transition, shaped by time and expansion. In this way, space is not simply a backdrop for cosmic events, it is part of the story itself, and what we perceive as emptiness may actually be the quiet echo of a far more active and interconnected beginning, still present in subtle forms that science continues to uncover. From ocean to emptiness, it presents the idea that today's empty space might be what remains after that cosmic ocean receded or transformed over time. When we try to understand the universe, we often assume that what we see now is how things have always been. Empty space, distant galaxies, and silent cosmic darkness feel permanent. But the deeper we explore, the more we realize that reality may have gone through dramatic transformations that challenge our basic assumptions. One of the most intriguing ideas is that space itself may have once existed in a very different form, one that was far more dynamic, dense, and interconnected than the emptiness we observe today. If we imagine the early universe not as a vacuum but as a continuous flowing medium, then everything changes. In such a state, the separation between matter and space would not yet be defined. Instead of isolated objects drifting in emptiness, everything would exist within a shared environment, constantly interacting and influencing each other. Motion would not feel like travel through empty distance, but like movement within a surrounding substance that fills all directions. Over vast periods of expansion and cooling, this initial state could have gradually transformed. As energy spread out and structures began to form, the once unified environment may have thinned, becoming less interactive and more transparent. What we now perceive as empty space might simply be the evolved version of that earlier condition, less dense, less active, but still carrying traces of its original nature. This idea reshapes how we think about the cosmos. Instead of viewing space as a passive stage where events unfold, it becomes an active participant in the evolution of the universe. The emptiness we observe is not truly empty, but a subtle continuation of something much more complex that existed before stars and galaxies formed. Even today, hints of that earlier state may still exist in the form of energy fields, quantum fluctuations, and cosmic background radiation. These are not just random phenomena, they could be remnants of a more unified cosmic condition. In this light, the universe is not a static expanse of nothingness, but a living history of transformation. What we call space may simply be the final, quiet expression of something once deeply connected, endlessly active, and far more profound than we can fully imagine. Connection to life and existence. The speech concludes by linking this theory to human existence, implying that life and water on Earth could be echoes of a deeper cosmic origin. When we reflect on our place in the universe, it is easy to think of ourselves as small beings surrounded by endless emptiness. The night sky appears silent, distant, and unchanging. Yet this perception may only be the surface of a much deeper and more complex reality. The idea that space could be the transformed remnant of a once more unified and dynamic state invites us to rethink everything we assume about existence itself. If the early universe behaved like a continuous fluid-like system, then separation as we understand it did not exist in the beginning. Everything would have been interconnected, not divided into stars, planets, or even atoms in their modern sense. Instead, reality may have been a single evolving field where energy and matter were indistinguishable, constantly shifting and reshaping in response to fundamental forces. In such a condition, space would not be empty distance, but an active medium filled with potential and movement. As the universe expanded and cooled, this unified condition would have gradually changed. Structures began to form, interactions became more defined, and the once continuous environment started to thin out. Over time, what was once dense and interconnected may have transformed into what we now call empty space. But this emptiness is not true absence. It is the outcome of expansion, like a memory of something far more concentrated and alive. What makes this idea so powerful is how it changes our understanding of existence. It suggests that nothing in the universe is truly isolated. Even in the vast regions between galaxies, there may be subtle connections left behind from an earlier state of unity. The fabric of space itself could carry traces of that ancient coherence, hidden beneath what appears to be silence and stillness. In this sense, the universe is not a broken or empty structure, but a continuous story of transformation. What we perceive as void is simply a later chapter in a much older process. And if that is true, then every part of existence, including ourselves, may still be connected to that original flowing beginning in ways we are only beginning to understand.